Il nous fait plaisir de vous accueillir dans le cadre de l'initiative Vert, un projet de mobilisation citoyenne parrainé par Équiterre. Welcome to this Vert event, a citizen mobilization project sponsored by Équiterre and hosted by our group, la Voix verte du quartier. Vert est une initiative non partisane et donc ne favorise aucun parti. Le but de cette initiative est de positionner les enjeux environnementaux au cœur des élections et ainsi aider les électeurs à faire des choix éclairés. L'entrevue d'aujourd'hui, ainsi que toutes celles qui auront été tournées avec les autres candidats, seront accessibles en ligne sur différentes plateformes, notamment sur la page Facebook de Vert. This is a non-partisan initiative with the sole goal of bringing environmental issues to the forefront of these elections and helping citizens make informed choices. This and every other interview conducted for this initiative will be available online on the Vert social media platforms. Merci de votre présence et bienvenue aujourd'hui à notre invité, M. Alex Tyrrell, chef du Parti Vert du Québec et candidat dans la circonscription de Notre-Dame-de-Grâce en vue des élections provinciales qui auront lieu le 3 octobre prochain. Thank you for coming and welcome Mr. Alex Tyrrell, leader of the Quebec Green Party and candidate in the NDG riding for the upcoming elections on October 3rd. Monsieur Tyrrell, nous vous demanderons de vous présenter pour 1 minute, puis nous vous poserons 6 questions avec un temps de réponse de 2 minutes chacune. Les questions vous seront posées en français et en anglais et nous vous laisserons le loisir de répondre dans la langue qui vous convient. We will ask you to briefly present yourself and then we will ask you 6 questions in both English and French. Feel free to answer in the language of your choice. And please keep your answers to 2 minutes each. Donc, pour 1 minute, s'il vous plaît, présentez-vous et parlez-nous de vos priorités environnementales. Please take a short minute to introduce yourself and your sustainability priorities.
Bonjour, hi. C'est un plaisir d'être ici puis de discuter d'environnement. My name is Alex Tyrrell. I'm the leader of the Green Party of Quebec. I've been leading the party for just under 9 years now. I studied at Concordia University. I lived in NDG for over 7 years. I have some family roots going back 3 generations actually in NDG. And it's my pleasure to be our party's candidate for this district. NDG has always been the top district for the Green Party of Quebec. The Green Party of Quebec is an eco-socialist political party. For us, eco-socialism, c'est prendre soin de l'environnement, mais aussi de la population en même temps. S'assurer qu'on a accès à un système de santé de qualité, que nos écoles sont bien financées et qu'on a un filet social dans lequel personne n'est laissé sur la marge. We also have a very inclusive identity policy. The Green Party is about environment, but it goes far beyond environment. We're a left-wing party. We have policies on all of the issues in our platform, the Nouveau Plan Vert. And it's a pleasure to take part in this event and to really discuss some very important environmental and social issues. Thank you.
Le groupe d'experts intergouvernemental sur l'évolution du climat, communément appelé le GIEC, nous rappelle que nos émissions de gaz à effet de serre, nos GES, ne diminuent pas assez rapidement et le Québec doit faire sa part. Pourtant, les sécheresses, les brasiers, l'acidification des océans et les inondations indiquent à quel point les changements climatiques mettent en péril notre vie sur la planète. Quels sont vos engagements pour accélérer la lutte au changement climatique et faciliter notre adaptation aux défis à venir? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, commonly called the IPCC, constantly reminds us that our greenhouse gas emissions are not decreasing fast enough, and this includes emissions in Quebec. Intense heat, fire, ocean acidification, and floods indicate how climate change is endangering our lives on the planet. If you are elected, how do you intend to accelerate and intensify our emissions reductions? How will you help our communities to adapt?
I have a bachelor's degree from Concordia University in environmental science. Et donc, les changements climatiques, c'est quelque chose qui me tient à cœur. Puis, je pense que l'obstacle principal à l'action climatique, c'est justement au niveau politique. We have some politicians in Quebec City that are making decisions on behalf of the population that involve large, widespread environmental sacrifice for some very short-term economic gains. With respect to reducing emissions, one of the main things that we propose at the Green Party of Quebec is to have free public transit. We think that having free transit will really help us increase the number of people riding the bus, and that increase in people riding public transit will allow us to have better frequency, better service, and really we need to bring people away from their private cars by giving them a faster, more efficient and more affordable means of public transport. C'est pour ça que le Parti vert du Québec, on propose des expansions massives dans le réseau de transport en commun, le prolongement de toutes les lignes de métro, incluant la construction de nouvelles lignes, la ligne rose, qui aurait des arrêts dans Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. C'est quelque chose de très important. Nous autres, au Parti vert du Québec, on prévoit un plan de décroissance de l'industrie automobile. On croit qu'il est venu le temps de se libérer de ça et de vraiment virer plus vers les transports en commun. On a aussi une politique de taxe carbone qui vise à augmenter le prix de l'essence pour diminuer l'utilisation du véhicule privé. And there's so many things that we can do all across Quebec for the energy transition. The Green Party of Quebec is the only party that's proposing a significant budget for the energy transition and for the protection of the environment. We've committed to spending $500 billion over a 4-year mandate. This is far higher than any other party, doesn't even come close to promising this kind of financing. And it's very important because we need to make these investments pour les générations futures. Puis, le Parti vert du Québec, on est très ouvert à augmenter les taxes sur les riches, les grandes entreprises, les multinationales, les compagnies minières, les émissions de carbone. Mais on est aussi ouvert à endetter le Québec pour payer la transition énergétique. And when I say that we're open to going into deficit to pay for this massive energy transition, it's really a question of priorities and a question of what's practical. Personally, I think that we do far better to leave future generations with a financial debt than with an environmental debt, because a financial debt can be reimbursed, whereas an environmental debt, you can't just buy it back. And I think that future generations would be far better served to have a Quebec that has already done its energy transition, that has the infrastructure in place to deal with the climate crisis, to both adapt to it and to bring drastically down our emissions. I think we'd be better off with that and with the financial debt than continuing to sacrifice the environment. All over Quebec, we're destroying wetlands, we're drying up lakes for mining projects. There's so many things that we can do, and the Green Party of Quebec is in politics to be a strong voice on these issues.
Le maintien des forêts et des milieux naturels sont importants pour protéger la biodiversité, capter et filtrer l'eau et capter le CO2. Toutefois, au Québec, ces milieux disparaissent rapidement au profit de l'étalement urbain, de l'agriculture industrielle et de l'exploitation forestière et minière. Qu'entendez-vous faire pour mieux protéger nos forêts et milieux naturels des activités humaines? The preservation of forests and natural ecosystems is important to protect biodiversity, capture and filter water, and capture CO2. However, in Quebec, many ecosystems are threatened by urban sprawl, industrial agriculture, as well as logging and mining. How will you help protect our forests and natural environment from human activities?
So this is a very important question. And the number one policy that the Green Party of Quebec is putting forward for this issue is to have a moratorium on the development of green spaces. And it's so important to do this because partout à travers Montréal et les alentours, on est en train de sacrifier des boisés. À Pointe-Claire, on est en train de raser le boisé Fairview. Il y a des endroits ici, je suis à la ville de Québec aujourd'hui, où on est en train de carrément détruire des boisés, assécher des milieux humides pour construire des garages. C'est un non-sens. Green Party of Quebec, we want to protect biodiversity and we want to take care particularly of our lakes. I'm happen to be president of a lake association in Laurentians that's faced with really some important environmental issues, from the runoff from animal agriculture and also invasive plants that are coming in and that are taking over the lake, colonizing it very quickly and directly decreasing the biodiversity. Despite this fact, there's very little government support that's available. The budget of the Ministry of Environment is only 1.5% of Quebec's entire budget, and people are left without the resources to protect biodiversity. There's also a lot of issues with the use of pesticides, for example. We have a government that has allowed the spraying of massive amounts of glyphosate and other dangerous pesticides and fertilizers with very little government oversight. We've had problems where our bodies that set the rules for these things have been taken over by industry people who have made recommendations to use more pesticides here than in places like Vermont and that sort of thing. So we need to make sure that the Ministry of Environment has the tools and the funding required to look after the environment. And I think that right now, it suits the government well to not finance these things because it enables them to pursue development that would otherwise be stopped by strong environmental regulation. And so those are some very important things in terms of policy that we want to put forward.
Les experts établissent un lien direct entre nos systèmes alimentaires et l'état de la planète. En effet, manger santé, c'est-à-dire moins de viande rouge, consommer des protéines végétales, plus de fruits, de noix et de légumes et moins d'aliments transformés, acheter bio et acheter local, aurait un impact particulièrement important sur la réduction des émissions de GES et le rétablissement de la santé planétaire. Quelles sont vos propositions pour favoriser les habitudes alimentaires plus saines de la part des Québécois et structurer un système alimentaire québécois qui soit bon pour notre santé et pour notre environnement? Experts draw a direct link between our food systems and the state of the planet. Indeed, eating healthy, i.e., less red meat, consuming vegetable proteins, more fruits, nuts, and vegetables, less processed foods, eating organic and buying local, all of this can have a particularly important impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing negative environmental pressures. What are your proposals to promote healthier eating habits among Quebecers and to structure a Quebec food system that is good for our health and good for our environment?
Question. And actually, the Green Party of Quebec is the only political party in the province that's proposing to reduce our consumption of animal products. We've set a target of a 50% reduction over a 10-year period. Et c'est très important de diminuer notre consommation de produits animaliers, à la fois à cause des GES, mais aussi à cause de l'impact sur la qualité d'eau au Québec. Il y a beaucoup d'installations agricoles qui sont en train de polluer des milieux naturels, qui sont en train de polluer des lacs et des cours d'eau. Les agriculteurs ont la permission du gouvernement pour polluer et c'est en train d'avoir un impact même localement ici au Québec, en plus de la contribution au changement climatique. So the Green Party of Quebec, since we want to reduce the consumption of animal products, of course, we don't want to force people to do anything, but we think that the government has a role to play in pushing citizens towards a more sustainable diet. And one of the ways that can be done is by having ad campaigns that inform people of the environmental impacts of consuming meat and encouraging them to explore alternatives. A lot of people are lacking the knowledge or the access to alternatives to reduce their consumption of animal products or to become vegan. It's not something that is that simple. People need to be supported in these changes. And of course, the Green Party of Quebec wants everybody to be able to eat organic food. When we go to the grocery store, organic food is often far more expensive than the food that's produced with heavy pesticides and heavy fertilizers and that sort of thing. These things need to be attacked through regulation. It's not just consumer pressure that can do this. We have to make sure that the government holds these companies responsible, that we set strong rules for the quality of our food, and also that we diminish our reliance on imported food products, because transporting things from California all the time is not sustainable. The Green Party of Quebec, we're calling for a national greenhouse program, which will have greenhouses implanted in every community in Quebec where people can come together to grow food in the community. We can increase our food security, and we can also grow our communities.
Les Canadiens figurent parmi les grands producteurs de déchets sur la planète et les Québécois n'y font pas exception. Nos sites d'enfouissement débordent et nos centres de tri peinent à gérer toute la matière qui leur est acheminée. Quels sont vos objectifs en lien avec la réduction de la surconsommation et la saine gestion des matières résiduelles pour favoriser la réduction à la source, le réemploi et le recyclage? Canadians are among the largest producers of waste on the planet, and Quebecers are no exception. Our landfills are overflowing and our sorting centers are struggling to manage all the material that is sent to them. What are your objectives in relation to the reduction of overconsumption and the sound management of residual materials, promoting reduction, reuse, and recycling?
So our main objectives on these issues are to make sure that we're treating all of our waste here in Quebec and that we're recycling to the fullest potential. For far too long, we've been packing our recyclable material and our garbage into container ships and sending it to China, sending it to other countries where it can be handled in substandard working conditions, and that often ends up being just burnt and having a really negative impact on the environment. We need to be treating our waste here. And one of the ways to do that is to stop relying on private corporations to deal with our recycling. Recycling should be nationalized. It should be something that's run by the government, and we should make sure that it's well financed, because at the moment, recycling centers are to a large extent dependent on what the price that they can sell the recycled material to finance their operations. Recycling should be financed by user fees that are applied at the time when somebody purchases an item. That's something that's very important to us. Also, obviously, beyond recycling, it's better to reduce at the source what we're consuming. Et c'est pour ça que le Parti vert du Québec, on appuie une politique qui vise le zéro déchet. On va s'y prendre par des moyens concrets. Je peux vous donner l'exemple de la tasse de café. Donc, vous savez, la tasse de café chez Tim Hortons, chez McDonald's n'est pas recyclable. Au Parti vert du Québec, on vise à bannir ces tasses-là à usage unique et les remplacer avec un système de dépôt-échange pour une tasse universelle. Donc, que vous soyez à Tim Hortons ou à McDonald's, la tasse, elle serait pareille. Tu pourrais la ramener sur un programme de dépôt-échange. Les entreprises qui vendent du café seraient obligées de nettoyer ces tasses-là et de les rendre disponibles à nouveau. Comme ça, on évite tout le transport, on évite d'envoyer des milliards de tasses de café jetables à l'enfouissement à chaque année. Et c'est une manière concrète qu'on peut réduire à la source de notre consommation sans impacter pour autant les habitudes des gens. Sans les forcer à traîner de la tasse réutilisable avec eux, ils vont avoir les moyens structurels pour le faire. Et en conclusion, on aimerait étaler cette façon de faire-là à plein de contenants jetables, là, que ce soit à l'épicerie, dans les restaurants pour emporter. Tout devrait fonctionner avec un système de dépôt-échange.
Au Québec, nous bénéficions de la présence de grandes quantités d'eau douce. Avec ce grand privilège vient de grandes responsabilités. Comme cette ressource semble gratuite et renouvelable, diverses industries l'utilisent ou la polluent sans avoir trop de compte à rendre. Quelles mesures comptez-vous mettre en place pour protéger notre eau douce et assurer la transparence de la part des grands utilisateurs? In Quebec, we benefit from an abundant access to fresh water. With this great privilege comes great responsibilities. As this resource appears to be free and renewable, various industries use or pollute it with little accountability. What measures will you put in place to protect our fresh water and ensure greater transparency by industries?
The first thing that we have to do to protect water in Quebec is to bring in much stronger regulation. There's too many companies that have the permission of the government, of us, to pollute. That's a problem. We also need to bring in an environmental police force that's able to go and crack down on companies that are not respecting the laws and the regulations. Right now, we have a Ministry of Environment that's very bureaucratic. They have very few inspectors on the ground, and there's a lot of companies that are not being held to account for the pollution that they're doing. Il faut aussi complètement revoir la façon qu'on approuve des projets industriels comme des mines. À l'heure actuelle, on a plusieurs mines qui sont proposées au Québec, dans les Laurentides, même pas si loin que Montréal. Cette semaine, j'ai été à Lac-des-Plages. Ils proposent de construire une mine là, de plusieurs kilomètres de long à ciel ouvert entre deux lacs. J'ai aussi été proche de la frontière du Labrador où le Québec est carrément en train d'assécher des lacs pour permettre l'agrandissement de mines de fer. So the mining industry is getting a complete free pass. We're talking about these massive mines that are going to be built right next to some of the most pristine water that we have here in the province. And all of this is about sacrificing the environment, long-term environmental sacrifice for short-term economic gain. And that's the main problem that we have here in Quebec is that we don't have the tools to enforce regulations. We allow companies to pollute. We allow them to use our water without paying their fair share and without respecting the environment. And we need a government in Quebec City that's going to hold these companies to account, that's going to make them pay for the damage that they're causing, and it's going to say no to projects that involve too much environmental sacrifice, despite any kind of economic gains that can come from such projects. So the Green Party of Quebec, we're a strong voice for the environment. We're a strong voice for holding corporations to account. And we hope that the government in Quebec will be able to do something to stop what's happening now because the choices they're making are going in completely in the wrong direction.
Les villes sont aussi sur le front concernant les changements climatiques. Si on parle de la gestion des déchets, développement des pistes cyclables, transport en commun, la lutte contre les îlots de chaleur, tout ça leur revient. Dans notre circonscription, nous avons un projet majeur, une dalle parc, qui consisterait en une passerelle verte au-dessus de l'autoroute 20 et qui permettrait aux piétons et aux cyclistes de rejoindre la Chine et les autres quartiers du sud-ouest. Notre circonscription jouxte également le parc Meadowbrook et le site de l'ancien hippodrome. Deux lieux qui sont importants pour notre communauté et au fort potentiel de verdissement. comment comptez-vous, collaborer efficacement avec les villes et soutenir leurs efforts en lien avec l'environnement et le climat? Quels seraient vos engagements pour les projets de verdissement dans et autour de notre circonscription? Cities are also on the front lines of climate change. Waste management, development of bike paths, public transit, fight against heat islands. In our writing, we have a major project, a park overpass that consists of a green bridge over Highway 20 that would allow pedestrians and cyclists to reach La Chine and other southwestern boroughs. Our riding also borders Meadowbrook Park and the former Blue Bonnet site, places that are important to our community and have great potential for greening. How do you plan to work effectively with cities and support their environmental and climate-related efforts? What commitments would you make to greening projects in and around our riding?
I think the number one commitment of the Green Party of Quebec for NDG in terms of green infrastructure would be the Dow Park Bridge. It's a project that would connect the Falaise Saint-Jacques to the other side of the canal, something that's very important, something that's been promised by the government for a long time. I've been working to protect the Falaise Saint-Jacques since around 2015. I've been to many protests. I've heard recently that there's some contaminants in there. There's some people's dogs who have gotten sick from being there. These things need to be cleaned up. It doesn't make any sense that in what we call an eco-territory in Montreal, that dogs are being poisoned by garbage that's been left behind. We need to take care of these green spaces, not just through having people come out on their spare time and volunteer, but there should be funding in place to decontaminate the Falaise Saint-Jacques and to treat this eco-territory with the respect that it deserves. We also need to work on heat islands in NDG. NDG is somewhat of a concrete jungle. There's a lot of areas that get really hot, and we don't have that much green space. So we need to make sure that we're modernizing the city, that we're planting trees on the side of roads, that we're taking back certain space from cars and transforming it into green space, into space for active transport and that sort of thing. And of course, there's a lot that the city of Montreal can do, and I wish that the city of Montreal was doing a little bit more, or rather a lot more. But they also need the support of the province to be able to do so. On a besoin de donner aux villes du Québec les moyens de s'attaquer aux problèmes environnementaux. On veut aussi donner aux villes la possibilité de dire non à tout projet de développement qui ne sont pas dans leurs intérêts. Juste dans la dernière semaine, je suis allé à 2 différents sites miniers, un au Mont-Rigaud et l'autre à Lac-des-Plages, où les municipalités s'opposent à l'activité minière, mais le Québec va de l'avant, peu importe l'opposition des municipalités locales. Donc, si on veut réinvestir dans la démocratie et réinvestir dans l'environnement, il faut donner aux villes le pouvoir de dire non aux projets qui sont néfastes pour l'environnement et qui ne sont pas dans leurs intérêts. Et bien sûr, les villes là, sont au cœur de la lutte contre les changements climatiques et pour la protection de l'environnement. Et un gouvernement du Parti du Québec va être là pour les soutenir sur toute la ligne.
Merci beaucoup, M. Tyrrell, pour votre participation. Nous sommes heureux et heureuses d'avoir pu en apprendre davantage sur vos ambitions. Thank you very much, Mr. Tyrrell, for your participation. We appreciate getting the opportunity to get to know you and how you care for the environment. Nous remercions l'ensemble des candidats qui ont participé à cet exercice. Nous rappelons à tous que les élections provinciales se tiendront le 3 octobre prochain. Toutes les entrevues se trouveront sur la page Facebook de Vert et nous encourageons l'ensemble des électeurs à s'informer davantage puis à s'engager en matière de protection environnementale et de lutte au changement climatique. We thank all the candidates who participated in this exercise. We remind everyone that the provincial election will be held on October 3rd. All interviews will be posted on the Vert Facebook page. We encourage all voters to become more informed and involved in environmental protection and fight against climate change. Thank you very much.